Hello, my name is Karen Masters. I am the spokesperson of the fourth phase of the Sloan Digital Sky Survey and a professor of astronomy and physics at Haverford College in the US. I'm here to talk with you about the demographics of people who engage in education and public outreach activities in our collaboration. And these slides were put together in collaboration with the Committee on Inclusion in SDSS and our Education and Public Outreach group. Let me first tell you about the Sloan Digital Sky Surveys. This is a multi-year, multi-phase project, a collaboration of astronomers across the world who get together and work on doing large-scale surveys of the sky. We're perhaps most famous for our redshift surveys using this telescope here in New Mexico. Since 2016, we've also been running observations from a telescope in Chile for a dual hemisphere view of the sky, which will be going forward into the next phase of SDSS, SDSS-IV, which is just starting this year. The phase I'm the spokesperson for is just winding down. In SDSS, we make annual or mostly annual public data releases. The next one is coming up in December. This emphasis on making our data open and accessible has led to its wide use in the community with over 11,000 papers using our data. We've been cited more than 100,000 times. In 2006 and 2009, this study found that SDSS was the highest impact astronomical observatory in terms of citations and publications. Our data is put online in a variety of websites. One of them is Sky Server, shown here. This is morphing into SciServer, which is a more flexible data service. You can do cloud computing there too. Our data is not just made available, it's also made accessible. And in the fourth phase, we do this via annual documentation workshops. Here's a picture of some of our members documenting our data in their 2018 workshop. We also create curated education or communication interfaces to the data. This is our SDSS Voyages website, which has data-driven exercises, both in English and Spanish. One of the most popular outreach activities we do is distributing plates for education. We've distributed over 100 plates to teachers all over the world. These plates are used as part of our survey. The fibers are plugged into holes in the plates to collect spectra from objects on the sky. They're designed for a specific patch of the sky, so once they're used on sky, they are no longer useful to us, and so we distribute them. You can also find them in museums and turned into artwork in institutions all over the world. All of this work is done by members of our collaboration. We're a big worldwide collaboration. In the fourth phase, we have more than 200 scientists on 4 continents, 5 different survey teams. And here are some pictures of collaboration meetings in recent years, of course, the most recent one done virtually. The SDSS demographic surveys were started in 2014, also ran in 2015, 16, and 18, and we should have done 2020, but the pandemic got in the way, so we'll be doing one shortly. These are really motivated by assessing, who's in the collaboration, how diverse it is, how inclusive it is, if there are any problem areas. They include a wide range of questions about career level, experience with SDSS, basic typical demographics, gender, race, sexual orientation, etc. We publish overviews of these demographic surveys. We published one in 2015, and there's one currently in preparation, reviewing the time series. Here's what SDSS-IV looked like in 2018. You notice about half of the collaboration are located in the US or Canada, about a quarter in Europe, and a quarter in the rest of the world, primarily in Latin America, so South America and Central America or Asia. The collaboration is well distributed across career stages, with a bit less than half being faculty, about a quarter postdocs, and we have grad students and research scientists. 65% of people answering the survey, so we had 229 responses in total, were male, and 80% are from the majority race or ethnic group where they live. This is mostly means white people, since we're mostly US or Canada or Europe. But of course, the inclusion of Asia and Latin America complicates this. So we will continue to talk about this as the majority or minority race or ethnicity. In 2016, and we continue this in 2018, we added questions about education public outreach. We wanted to track how many times people had done different activities. So we asked them to answer roughly how many times they'd done each of the following suite of a large number of different types of education communication activities. We were also interested to know how important our members felt education public outreach was, if they'd like to spend more time on it, and what the barriers were from them for what barriers were for them to spend more time on it. So the good news is that our members answered overwhelmingly that they felt education public outreach was important. So we have almost 90% saying it's somewhat, very, or extremely important. This is in 2018. It was similar in 2016. We also found that many of our scientists want to spend more time on education public outreach. Almost half of them answered that they would like to spend more time. A similar number saying they're content with the amount of time they spend, and as just a small number want to spend less time. And time is a big theme when we ask people why they don't spend more time on education and public outreach. This is a wordle of the responses to that question, which overwhelmingly shows our scientists feeling time pressure, feeling they do not have enough time to spend on education and public outreach. So here's a nice quote: "If I spend too much time on EPO things, I will not have enough time to check all the other boxes needed for tenure." This was a tick all the boxes that apply answer, plus people could fill in their own answer. And what we found is that the #1 response was feeling pressure to spend more time on research was preventing people from spending time on education public outreach. We also see people needing to spend time getting funding for research, or that they're already involved enough in education. Almost 20% of people, sadly, say that if they do education public outreach, they're expected to do it on their own time. It's not considered part of their primary job role. We also see people who are limited by the time they spend on teaching or administration. And down here, we do see some impact for funding for outreach, or people feeling they do not have enough training. This is broadly in line with the other surveys of scientists and their attitudes towards education, public outreach, and time spent on it. So this is an example from 2006 Royal Society survey of scientists working in the UK. Overwhelmingly, they felt that time spent on public engagement was worthwhile. And the reasons they gave for not spending more time were they don't have enough time, with a small mention also of peer opinions, this so-called Sagan effect, the idea that if you spend a lot of time on public engagement, you may not be a serious scientist. We didn't ask that question directly, but we do wonder if the time pressure felt to spend more time on research at the cost of spending more time on education public outreach might be related to that. This was an interesting study done in 2012, Howard Eklund et al., where they looked at academic biologists and physicists' views of science, outreach, and education. In this work, they found that women were much more involved in outreach than men, and in particular amongst physics researchers, 76% of men were involved, but only 58% of men, 76% of women and 58% of men. So we wanted to look at this in the SDSS data, and we've put together this histogram of the number of EPO activities people did. So the blue here is a histogram for women and red for men. And this has been normalized by the total number of answers in each group. What we see is most people do a small number of activities. Schools engagement and public talks are the most common. But if we look at people doing large numbers of activities, we find that women seem to be overrepresented in this group. So looking at that as a gender ratio, so this is the same bins, we see for amongst people who do less than 20 activities, the gender balance is pretty comparable to the overall gender balance of the survey, or people responding to the survey. But amongst people who do 20 or more activities, we see that men are underrepresented, women are overrepresented. Howard Eklund reflected on their similar findings, saying that, the fact that more women spend time on outreach may lead to a perception that outreach is a more feminine, care-oriented task, which unfortunately decreases the legitimacy of it, which factors into people feeling time pressure to spend more time on other activities. And Howard Eklund go on to say this negative regard for outreach work may be tied to a Sagan effect. So, this idea that scientists' research credibility gets reduced by them spending lots of time on outreach. Although notably, Sagan himself is an example of this phenomena that the science celebrities are overwhelmingly men. Women are not overrepresented amongst people doing very high profile science communication, which is an interesting subtlety to this effect. We also wanted to look at the impact of race or ethnicity on who does EPO. We wondered, anecdotally, there's evidence that people from minority groups are expected to do more education and communication. We were not able to find evidence of that in the data, perhaps because the numbers are so small, because our collaboration is overwhelmingly from the majority race. So here is my summary and some ideas about future work. Since I'm out of time, I will just leave this slide and I will say thank you very much for your time.